This video is about a city that most of you have probably never even heard of. Yet, it's perhaps the most unusual city in Georgia, and in my opinion, it should be a must-visit place in this country. What makes this city so unusual is, let's say, its geography. The city is located inside the Quirilla River Canyon. That's the river flowing right here, and there isn't much flat land around. As a result, the city center grew along both banks of the river, while the residential districts and other neighborhoods are scattered across the steep cliffs surrounding it. And you might be wondering, why build a city in such difficult terrain? The answer is manganese ore. It's hard to imagine, but this small picturesque town in Imereti was once one of the world's largest centers of manganese mining. This was the most industrialized city in Georgia, and, by the way, the city with the strongest workers' movement. Manganese is still mined here today, but nowhere near the scale of the past. Some of the mines have closed, and from what I understand, the industry is now operating on the edge of profitability. Why exactly? I don't know, but that's not what this video is about. So the question is, how do you move around a city that's literally spread across cliffs? The answer is cable cars. We're used to thinking of cable cars as something built for tourists, but here in Chiatura they're part of the public transport system. The city once had more than a dozen lines, and today 4 routes still connect the center with different neighborhoods. Here's the first cable car station we're taking today. It's located right next to our hotel, literally just a few hundred feet away. What's interesting is that the city center is only about 1.2 kilometers from here, yet there's still a cable car connecting this neighborhood to downtown. So you can either walk there or take a ride in the cabin. The cabins leave every 5 minutes, and a ride costs just 50 tetri. You pay at the entrance with a bank card or your phone. So yes, a regular bank card works just fine. Oh, it's done. So, right in the city center, next to the main park, there's this large cable car station. From here, the lines spread out in 4 different directions, connecting 4 different parts of the city. We arrived at one of them, and there are 3 more that we need to check out. And as for the Central Park, well, here it is. That's all. The wide-angle lens even makes it look a bit bigger. The cable car system here is actually quite simple. Right at the entrance to this central building, where all the lines branch out, there's a sign showing that from the 2nd floor you can travel to Naguti or Lesubani. Lesubani is where we came from. Then from the 4th floor, there's a line going to the sanatorium station. And there's also a smaller branch in the neighboring building where another line starts. So the first place we're heading to is the sanatorium station. At the upper station, there's a small park that looks like it was built quite recently. Everything feels very fresh. Even the trees are still young and looks like they were planted not long ago. There aren't any large trees here yet. What it does have is plenty of gazebos, lots of benches, and some nice landscaping. There's also a spot marked on the map as the former Pioneer Palace. And there are a couple of amusement rides here as well. They look fairly new, so they either operate at certain times or may start operating soon. But first of all, sure, you can come here for a walk, have a picnic, and relax. But the main reason to visit this place is that it's one of the best viewpoints overlooking the entire city. There are even benches here that face the city instead of the park. You can already tell that Chiatura is a very green city just by walking around downtown. But when you see it from up here and look at all that greenery, it's really something unusual. Chiatura doesn't have a specific sightseeing that people come here to see. The city itself is the attraction. It's a great place to walk around, ride the cable cars, and enjoy the views from above. But if you're looking for a famous landmark, there is one just 10 kilometers from Chiatura. It's a truly iconic place and definitely worth visiting if you live in Georgia or are traveling around the country. I'm talking about the Katski Pillar. It's a very unusual place. Technically, it's a men's monastery, and on its ground stands this tall rock pillar. We managed to speak with one of the monks, and he told us that, as far as he knows, nobody has actually lived up there for at least the last 15 years. Only monks are allowed to climb up there. It's not a tourist attraction, even though nobody lives there permanently at the moment. He also told us there's a small guest house on the monastery grounds. Not the kind you can book online, of course, meant for monks visiting from other monasteries or for relatives of the monks who live here. There's also a small museum on the property. One thing I only learned after coming here, simply because I got curious and started reading about it, is that there's actually a term for this practice. It's called pillar dwelling, when monks live on elevated places because being higher is believed to bring them closer to God. If you read about it, including on Wikipedia, the church at the top was originally built sometime between the 6th and 8th centuries. And back then there was obviously no metal staircase. Somehow people not only climbed up there, maybe using ropes or carving steps into the rock, I have no idea, but they also built an entire church. Just imagine how much building material had to be carried all the way up. I definitely recommend visiting this place. You can stop here on your way to Chiatura, make a short trip from Chiatura itself, come from Kutaisi, or really from anywhere nearby. It's absolutely worth seeing. To keep this video from getting too long, let me quickly tell you about all the cable car lines that operate here as public transport. In the building behind me, there are 3 cable car lines. 2 of them leave from the 2nd floor. One goes to the Leshubani district, which is where we came from. There aren't really any attractions or viewpoints there, so unless you live in that area, there's probably not much reason to visit. The line next to it, on the same floor, goes to the Naguti district. It's also mainly a residential area with no major attractions, but the ride itself is longer and the cabins pass incredibly close to apartment buildings. At some points, you're practically flying over people's balconies. It's a really interesting experience, and I'd recommend taking this ride not for the destination, but simply for the journey itself. Just ride there and back. I personally enjoyed it a lot. Then, if you go from the 2nd floor up to the 4th floor in the same building, you'll reach the sanatorium district. That's where we've already been. It's the area with the park and the great viewpoint overlooking the city, so it's definitely worth visiting. After that, if you walk through this passageway behind me, you'll reach another building, or maybe another station would be a better word. Anyway, that's where the 4th and final cable car line starts. It's called the Muhaze station line. It climbs another hillside, basically the one next to the hill with the viewpoint. But again, it mainly serves a residential neighborhood. It's quiet, peaceful, with playgrounds and apartment blocks. There aren't any major attractions there, and there aren't any viewpoints right next to the station. The ride itself feels very similar to the trip up to the sanatorium station. On the other hand, even one day is enough to ride all of these cable cars at a relaxed pace. You can spend more time where there are viewpoints or interesting places and simply ride back and forth on the others. It doesn't take much time, it costs almost nothing, and honestly, why not? And then, when our day was already planned out, I accidentally discovered another cable car during my morning run. The cable cars we've looked at so far are part of the city's public transport system, but this one feels much more like a tourist attraction. It goes up to a hill with some nice views. There are no residential neighborhoods up there. And while the public transport lines cost around 20 cents, how much do you think this one costs? It's free. When was the last time you saw something made for tourists in Georgia that was completely free, unless we're talking about a waterfall or a section of river that hasn't been fenced off yet? At the upper station, there's an abandoned mine, along with several abandoned buildings where workers once lived. There's also a huge excavator. But what makes this place even more interesting is that if you walk in that direction for about 15 or 20 minutes, you'll reach another viewpoint that was recommended by the owner of our hotel. There's no separate cable car going there. You can either drive up from the other side or simply walk there from here. On the map, it's marked as a viewpoint, but in reality, it looks more like a park. In fact, it's probably even larger than the Central Park. Another interesting thing is that all the cabins on Chiatura's public cable cars look similar to the ones you'll find elsewhere in Georgia. They're like the cable cars at ski resorts, the ones that go up to Argo in Batumi, or the ones that climb to Matasminda in Tbilisi. But this one was restored in the same style as the cable cars that operated here during the Soviet era. Another funny thing about this city is that, as I mentioned earlier, there used to be many more cable car lines. So when you're walking around, you constantly come across abandoned stations, and sometimes you can even spot the old cabins still hanging above your head. It was obvious that Chiatura isn't a tourist city even while looking for a place to stay. There aren't many accommodation options here. There are only a handful of hotels within the city itself, literally just a few. There are also some apartments for rent. I don't mind staying in apartments, but I don't really like the check-in process. Usually you have to call the owner and wait for them to arrive. I've had situations where I had to wait 40 minutes or even an hour. I much prefer arriving at a hotel, checking in at the reception desk, and that's it. And if we're talking about proper hotels located inside the city, not 8, 15 or 25 kilometers away, there really aren't that many options, especially if you're looking for good value for money. For example, the hotel where we stayed cost 155 lari with breakfast included. That was with a Genius Level 3 discount on booking. The hotel was modern, comfortable, had a swimming pool, nice views, and overall offered excellent value for money by Chiatura standards. As for alternatives, at least when I was looking on Booking, I couldn't find anything within the city that offered a similar balance of price and quality. If you choose an apartment instead, you can expect to pay around 70 to 80 lari per night. But judging by the photos, many of them have fairly old interiors, although some of them do have good ratings. Anyway, you can always check Booking and decide for yourself. The cafe and restaurant situation in the city isn't quite as impressive. Whenever I arrive somewhere new, my usual strategy is simple. I open Google Maps and look for places with at least a 4.5 or 4.6 rating, and not just a few reviews either. I like to see at least a couple dozen reviews. Usually, if a place meets those criteria, it's hard to be disappointed. But in Chiatura, when you open the map, most restaurants in the city center either have only 2 or 3 reviews or their ratings are around 4.0, 4.2, 3.7, maybe 4.3. And honestly, I usually don't even go into places with ratings like that. As far as the city center is concerned, there's only one place with plenty of reviews and a perfect 5-star rating. It's a shawarma place. And yes, the shawarma is genuinely good. The only catch is that shawarma is basically the entire menu. The only choice you get is the size. The second place we tried was the restaurant at the Sanatorium cable car station, the one up by the viewpoint. It has a 4.7 rating on Google Maps, and overall everything was good. The food was good, the service was fine, and in my opinion the rating is deserved. Honestly, this view feels unreal. I've lived in Georgia for years, so I'm used to driving through areas surrounded by mountains. I'm used to seeing houses on hillsides and green landscapes everywhere. Normally that's nothing surprising, but here the mountains are bigger, they're steeper. The buildings are packed much more densely together. And it's not just the small private houses, although there are plenty of those and they look great too. It's when you see an actual cliff with a 9-story apartment building standing on it. I don't even know how to describe it. The feeling is incredible. That's why the views of Chiatura from the viewpoints or from a drone are so impressive. You look at it and can hardly believe that a place like this actually exists. So let's sum everything up. A city built inside a canyon with neighborhoods scattered across steep cliffs. A city where cable cars serve as public transport. A city with its own unique history, beautiful scenery, and a very special atmosphere. It's about 3 hours from Tbilisi and around 3.5 hours from Batumi, and there are almost no tourists here. You have to admit, it's not often that you find a place this unusual that's also so easy to reach. For me, Chiatura is definitely one of my favorite cities in Georgia. Let me know in the comments whether you'd heard of this city before watching this video, whether you've been here yourself, what you think about it, and whether you're planning to visit after watching. And of course, if you think this video deserves it, don't forget to support the channel by leaving a like. That's all for today. See you next time.